Are you looking to grow revenues, increase profitability, or obtain financing? If so, you came to the right place.
Running a business is all about leadership. How do you become a better leader? Learn from the successful entrepreneurs and business owners how to lead your organization more effectively. That's why we created Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business, to help you succeed with your host, Andrew Frazier, Business Growth Pro and CFO and founder of the Small Business Pro University. Every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're joined by experienced entrepreneurs and business owners who share their secrets to success via Livestream. Also, every Friday morning, we release a new podcast episode. Either way, you will learn about developing your business leadership skills from our roster of highly performing guest experts. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbpru.com.
Good evening and welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05. I'm your host, Andrew Frazier, and excited to just be back here talking small business once again on Tuesday night. As you know, we always bring excellent guests who really can share valuable insights and expertise that's valuable for entrepreneurs and small business owners, and generally because they have experience as business owners and understand what you're going through, understand what your challenges are going to be and what they are, and have overcome many of them. So tonight is like no other. Our guest is Lyneir Richardson. He's done a lot of great things. He's been an entrepreneur, business owner. He's been a leader in the educational field, in the political field, and really done some great things for entrepreneurs and business owners. And today, our topic is empowering urban entrepreneurs. And he's the executive director of the Center for Urban Entrepreneurship Development at Rutgers University. So, definitely want to bring him on so you get a chance to meet him, and we're going to just talk about how to urban entrepreneurs and business owners can be more successful, and different ways that they have opportunities to be empowered. So hey, Lyneir, how you doing tonight?
Hey, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, great. Thanks for being here. We got you here in Jersey, and on almost the hottest day of the year. So, fortunately, the AC's been working.
That's exactly right, Andrew. I'm happy to be here, man.
Okay, excellent. And, really, we're just going to chat tonight a little bit about business. You have a lot of experience working as an entrepreneur, working with entrepreneurs, and, we've connected for many years, and you've always been doing great things, supportive of entrepreneurs and business owners, and really working to help get them resources. And we're going to talk about some of the great things and opportunities that business owners have to understand, because unfortunately so many business owners don't even know a lot of the resources that are available to them for free or for low cost. So why don't we get started? So let's if you can share a little bit about your background, where you're from, how you got to where you are, and a little bit about your journey, that would be great.
Sure. So I grew up on the west side of Chicago. My parents were entrepreneurs. My dad and mom own and still own, continuously operating now for about 44 years, a bar and restaurant in Chicago. And so as we were growing up through high school, I cleaned up the parking lot. I restocked the, beer, freezers. I DJ'd on Thursday nights when if the DJ didn't show up, and every night at dinner table we talk about something related to entrepreneurship. New employee, a marketing campaign, how we're going to raise money. for new events or undertakings that my dad and mom were pursuing. So that's the orientation. I have one brother, and we both have had the careers in entrepreneurship. I graduated from law school, and I practiced law initially at a big bank. And at the bank, there were about 90 lawyers in the law department, and my job was to document loans for the bank. It was a big bank, so we were making $100 million loans to a public utility or some big private corporation, transportation company, or leasing. That was the area I was in. And it wasn't until I got an opportunity to do a pro bono assignment, which was the bank was making a $100,000 loan to a barber who was buying his building on the west side of Chicago. And something about that work, it was the same promissory note and loan documents and sort of legal documents, but something about that work, community development work, supporting entrepreneurship, really brought it all to life for me. And so ever since that day, that's been really my goal. I couldn't articulate it this succinctly. It took me many years to say it this way, but what's been my passion is getting resources to people and places that other people overlook or undervalue, right? And so when they say it's hard to do a loan there, and they say it's hard to start a business there, say it's hard to get a real estate project there, that's been my career calling, working in urban, ethnic, in underserved places to help strengthen neighborhoods, to get capital to entrepreneurs who look like you and I, and to help people be successful. So that was the early part of my career. It really was a bank lawyer, and I left the bank shortly thereafter and went and worked for a guy who was doing community development, who was building houses and townhouses. And I worked for him for a few years and said, all right, I'm going to do my own thing. I saved about $70,000, and I left the bank. And at the time, I was never a right time for entrepreneurship. My first son was about to be born, and who starts a business, when you got a baby on the way? But the time was right, and I started a company initially myself, and with another guy, I would say a 2-man and a 1-man office, and I built the business over the next 5 or 6 years to about $9 million, a little over $9 million a year in annual revenue, developing, building, and selling houses in Chicago. I developed, hundreds of houses, and was named SBA Young Entrepreneur of the Year, and all of cover of the Cranes, newspaper, appointed by mayors and governors to commissions. And I said I had all the highs of entrepreneurship, but also had the lows where I overextended, ran out of cash, ultimately had to sell the company in a fire sale. And people always say you're not an entrepreneur until you made payroll. And I joke, man, you're not an entrepreneur until you miss the payroll, and you have to keep your team sort of working and inspired, to continue to achieve the vision until at least you can find a way to exit. And so I exited. I sold the company and got a job in big corporate. I led a national group. I was a vice president of a $40 billion shopping center company, still with the same mission. My job was, I was vice president of urban development, and the job was to get retailers, national retailers, to see opportunity and to open stores in ethnic neighborhoods around the country. And I did projects in Baltimore. I did the first Target store in the city of Baltimore. I led the team there. We did projects in Birmingham, Alabama. Worked on projects in Detroit and Harlem and south side of Chicago. And that became an experience in corporate. And then fast forwarding, after a few years in corporate, there was the Great Recession, and everybody doing real estate development in that company largely were laid off. And I thought about what I'd do next. I moved to Newark, New Jersey, and I headed the Economic Development Corporation in Newark when Cory Booker was mayor. It was a fun time. Sort of the recession thawed out, and we were able to jumpstart over $2 billion of new development in the city. And when Cory Booker became Senator Booker, shortly thereafter, I moved to Rutgers University. I lead the Rutgers Center for Urban Entrepreneurship and Economic Development. I've been doing that for 7 years. I'm sure we're going to talk more about that tonight. At the same time, I run a social enterprise that's raised now probably almost $18 million or so of capital to strengthen neighborhoods by investing in entrepreneurs. So that's the summary. And I tell people, hopefully life is long and you never know how winding the road is in your career. And that it's a marathon, not a sprint. I joke that I can't keep a job, but it's been fun, sort of learning, experiencing failure, understanding how to recover from failure, and then really developing, new entrepreneurship strategies and this education outlook, or this outlook about, can I be of service to entrepreneurs? That's made me happier, being of service as well as, generating revenue from my entrepreneurial pursuits.
Okay. Outstanding. I mean, that's a great journey, and you've done some tremendous stuff. You hit on a few key things that I just want to reflect a little on.
Yeah.
And one of the first ones is, there's a lot of people looking to figure out, when should I make the jump to entrepreneurship? Should I stay part-time or go full-time? One big thing you said is you saved $70,000, which, you have to be pretty serious if you're going to save $70,000. And you talk to a lot of people who are looking to be entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs. How do you counsel them in terms of, if they're thinking about starting a business, what do you recommend people do?
Yeah, so I'll fast forward to today and then work my way back. So I've been an entrepreneur with 26 employees, with all the responsibilities, sleepless nights, and it all on the line as an entrepreneur. And I've been an employee. And right now I have sort of a hybrid situation, which I really find enjoyable. I have a job at Rutgers University and Rutgers Business School, and I have a social enterprise that I lead. And I believe my social enterprise makes me a better employee. I believe my employment makes me a better entrepreneur. So I call it the hybrid entrepreneur, where I've been able to stitch together a way where my entrepreneurship and my employment are sort of mutually reinforcing, or, accretive in some way to each other. And I really encourage more entrepreneurs to think about when you make the jump. I jumped from the bank because I just was like, I don't want to work for the man anymore. I want to do my own thing. But when I look back on it, I could have done my bank job. I understood the job. I didn't love it. It was paying me well. I had benefits. I had, 401k and all those things. And I probably could have done the bank job and still had enough energy to pursue entrepreneurship in a way. But my orientation was, I got to jump out. So when I tell my advice, I have now sons and daughters that are in their 20s. And when I'm giving them advice, I'm saying, yeah, I understand you want to be entrepreneurial. That's sort of in our DNA now. But how do you do it in a way that's strategic? And when do you jump? And some of it is entrepreneurs by necessity, right? I got fired, I got laid off, I got to find a way to feed my family, right? Others are entrepreneurs by choice, right? That I decided I don't want to work for the man anymore. But I believe there's a middle ground that says, hey, if I can, and many people will moonlight, they have a side hustle, a side job, but really to the extent that you can figure out a way to make your entrepreneurship and your employment coexist and again, be beneficial in both sectors. That's when I've been happiest, and that's when I've been telling entrepreneurs. Because the hardest thing for me to see, even now in my role at Rutgers, is to see entrepreneurs who put it all on the line. And I get the ethos and all of the books and the folklore about You got to have this moxie, and it's all or nothing. Take no prisoners. You got to eat, sleep, and dream it. But the hardest thing is for me to see entrepreneurs who fully exhaust their savings, uh, max out their credit card so their credit is hurt, or get older and have no health insurance because they're running a race and they think at some point I'm going to create an enterprise. And I have to hedge in this advice around hybrid entrepreneurship because it is counterintuitive, or certainly opposed to some of the the folks. You got to be all about it every day, and you got to put it all on the line, and all the eggs in one basket, and watch the basket. But for me, and for my advice to people that I care about, people ask me all the time, if you raise $100 million and your social enterprise is remarkably successful, will you leave Rutgers? And my answer is always the same: but not if I don't have to, right? Because I am adding value there. And I mean, at some point, I imagine you can't do both, right? Can you really run $100 million enterprise and with the right focus? But again, it just depends on the orientation. So, long answer to a short question. I call it entrepreneurship, the hybrid model, and I'm really encouraging more people to consider doing that, just so they're, I don't have to, I'm meeting Andrew. I don't have to do a deal. I don't have to be on this call tonight saying, boy, I got to say the right thing because I hope someone will hear what I say and will call me and want to do a deal because I got to meet payroll a week or 2 weeks from now. I really need to do this. I'm not so hungry that, I'm desperate, right? I'm strategic, right? And I want to find opportunity to do deals strategic, and then it makes me a better employee, right? I understand. I have an owner's view about what needs to be accomplished from my work and how to measure performance and what's expected of me and what's the value add that my employer should get. So I can go on and on about the hybrid model. It's been very beneficial, and I've been happiest in that. But when I have a job and an entrepreneurial venture.
Okay, no, that's great. Definitely. One thing you mentioned is the hybrid reduces risk in many ways, and many people, many business owners and entrepreneurs, you can't appreciate sometimes how risky it is being a business owner and entrepreneur until you're there, and sometimes not until you've run into the risk. So anything you can do to mitigate risks and prepare yourself to be more successful. And just like you, I see too many people who are business owners run through all their cash and then their credit's hurt, and that takes a long time to fix. So I always caution that you got to keep your finances in order. You got to save some money. You can't just go out there without any money, and
right.
And you don't want to go out there with less money than you need. You need to know how much you need, and because once you get out there, it's a lot harder to get the money. So
access to capital. People always talk about it. Number one reason for entrepreneurial, not successful. And I remember those first probably 7 years. I always felt that, man, I wish I had $60,000 more. I don't know why that was the number, but I always felt like, man, if I would have waited and saved $60,000 more, right? It's hard raising capital, right? But you have to. It's part of entrepreneurship, right? And friends and family, banks, I've won pitch competitions, all about, and even today, focus on, getting capital to operate and to grow.
Mm-hmm. And you get really creative when you need the money.
Right. Absolutely.
So you got a question about the hybrid model. Daryl Spence says, given the hybrid model, are you offering something like that at Rutgers to learn how to do that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's so at Rutgers, let me spend a few minutes. So the Rutgers Center for Urban Entrepreneurship and Economic Development is a center at the at the Rutgers Business School. And when I talk about the hybrid model, there's a lot that's really special about Rutgers. We have a chancellor who's made sort of public engaged scholarship, her, sort of mission. She's a national, international sort of spokesperson about how universities shouldn't just be in a place, but it should be of a place. And the faculty's members should find ways to really be engaged, and their research should be helping society. And I love that work. And we have a business school dean who's made social impact one of her strategic priorities, even before all the craziness of 2020. These were our missions. So that's the context in which I get to lead the Center for Urban Entrepreneurship and Economic Development. Rutgers, for now over 12 years, each year runs capacity building programs that are 90% of the participants in those programs are not Rutgers students. They're people in the community, entrepreneurs down the street, or operating a coffee shop or restaurant or consultancy, or some type of creative entrepreneur with a performing arts or photography business. And so that's the context. Our work is to help entrepreneurs get to the next level. And to this point, we've helped over 600 entrepreneurs. Over 70% are entrepreneurs of color, African American or Latino. Over 60% are women. 40% are in Newark around or in Essex County. So that work is something we're really proud of. And we have this goal of helping 1,000 entrepreneurs reach $1 million a year in revenue. We call it 1,000 million. The question is, we now have, I guess now we're probably certainly over 200. With last count, it was like 187. We counted a couple of years ago. And we have these entrepreneurs that, some are at 1.01 million, some are at 10 million, 10.01 million. And we have a whole lot of people in the 250 to, $1 million range. And as you know, Andrew, the $1 million is not the end all be all. It's a threshold. It's the first time when hopefully there's some owner's comp and the owners can hire some people or one or more people, or they can really talk to a bank or venture capital. They got customers and true customer validation. And so our goal is, can we help 1,000? 1,000 times a million. I always joke with people, what's the math? 1,000 times a million is $1 billion. Can our little center at Rutgers have $1 billion of economic impact by helping, 1,000 small, mostly entrepreneurs of color have impact? And so that's our work. Our work at Rutgers is working with business owners to help them get to the next level. So it's not as if we're sort of teaching folks how to think strategically about a growth plan, connecting with coaches. Most recently, we've been connecting people to capital. And, I've started to have this feeling that just training and just coaching and just capacity building without some money attached is like workforce development without a job. So we're creating more and more programs. We formed an angel fund. We formed this fund to support Black entrepreneurs out of COVID. I really would like to raise more money to be able to make investments and even, non-dilutive, grants to entrepreneurs with great ideas that are trying to get them off the ground. So that's our program at Rutgers.
Okay, no, you're doing some great stuff there. I remember when you were just starting your fund and reaching out to people, and and that's groundbreaking. So, one of your focuses was on the community being the investors as well. So, no, definitely good. We got a comment from Ed Blunt. I think sometimes the hybrid is harder than raising capital and saving money, but definitely.
No, again, not easy. And again, no part of entrepreneurship, I don't want to make categorical statements, right? But my thought is this is about keep getting up, right? So when I talk to my kids about entrepreneurship, it's about I tell myself, keep getting up and don't be scared, right? Using my St. Louis accent, don't be scared, right? Midwest accent, right? You just got to keep getting up. You got to keep sitting in the chair. You got to keep being creative. You got to keep talking to people about the next opportunity. You got to strategize. Entrepreneurship is often we're doing stuff that hadn't been done before. There's no playbook, right? So, you can't be scared. You got to act as if, in many instances, right? And so many parts of it is not easy. On the other hand, I do also sort of tell people that I've been happiest as an entrepreneur when I felt like my business was either in a growth sector or in the flow of capital. So I'm often spending time, when I was in my 20s, I would show up in a room and I would start my sales pitch. Lyneir, here's what I'm doing. I didn't care who in the room. I didn't care which direction was the flow. Well, in my 40s and then now in my 50s, I first try to assess what's the direction of things? Where's the right flow? And who's in the room? How do I connect to what other people's strategic priorities are? Where's the capital flowing? What are growth sectors, right? And then how can I align what I want to do and my expertise and my service or product offering, with growth sectors and with the flow of capital, so that I'm not swimming against the current, I'm swimming with the current, often with a little niche or a little different strategy. Again, that's what entrepreneurial ingenuity and finding your niche is all about. But it really is, saying, all right, there's capital for this. This is a growth sector, right? I joke all the time that I think more entrepreneurs of color really need to think about, growth sectors, right? So where, go, green energy, anything related to tech, cannabis, drones, or AI, any of that stuff, right? And so I always joke that even if I have an old economy business idea, I got my mother's recipe for cupcakes or cookies, how do I connect that with a growth sector? You put some cannabis in those cookies, I joke, or, in the cupcakes, or, if I'm an event planner, let me do event planning for a growth sector industry. If I'm doing auto repair, because I learned that, from my father and grandfather, can I turn that into repair of autonomous vehicles or drones, any of that stuff? How do I start to make the connections that will, give me opportunity to grow as more and more, as the industry changes and as the world changes?
Okay, actually, you definitely hit on a lot of key things. One of the things that I always talk to people about is, if you're going to be successful, and especially with COVID, number one, you have to be proactive. You can't be sitting on your laurels waiting for things to come to you. But you also have to be creative, like you talked about. You can't do the same thing as everybody else, because then how do you differentiate yourself? And then you have to be flexible, because if you can be flexible and provide for the needs better than others, then you're going to be the clear choice. So those three things fit with what you're talking about. And really also you look at the trends. What are the trends? It's easier to swim with the current than against the current. And how do the trends intersect with your strengths? Because you got to play to your strengths. And then are you prepared to grow? Pulling all that stuff together is key, and like you're saying. So definitely want to talk more about this, and also really want to dig into some of the lessons learned, because I know you've learned so many different things that could be valuable to the entrepreneurs and business owners. But what I want to do first is I want to just share a little bit about the Small Business Pro University, because definitely this show is produced through the Small Business Pro University, and it's good to know what that is. And here's a quick video, and then I'll be back with Lyneir talking small business. Do you own your business, or does it own you? Is your business growing, and are you making enough money? As a business owner, there are so many things you need to know to become more successful. Hello, my name is Andrew Frazier, the Business Growth Pro and CFO. I created the Small Business Pro University for you. Small Business Pro University has self-paced, dynamic, multimedia learning experiences created by more than 20 instructors who are business owners just like you. Small Business Pro University will empower you to become a masterpreneur by learning the secrets to creating a successful enterprise, to go from working in your business to working on your business. Take advantage of our strategic coaching program, or just simply choose the courses that you need. At www.sbprou.com, we will empower you to thrive and not just survive, and make more money in any business environment. Good evening. I'm back with Lyneir Richardson on Leadership Live at 8:05. We're talking about empowering urban entrepreneurs. And I really just want to hit on something that I don't know if you remember you said, but you sponsored an event at Rutgers for the Black Business Alliance, and you were talking to the group. And, you said, you were all, you were doing millions of dollars in business, and you felt great until you talked to another real estate investor company and about what they were making on their deals. And you're like, man. So talk a little bit about that and what type of what you learned in the learning experience, lessons learned.
Man, so this business is there's all kind of lessons, and and hopefully we learn the first time, it won't have to keep repeating. So I learned so many early lessons from failure, right? And there's some lessons that failure only teaches, and failure is not fun. Failure is not final either, right? It's not fun, and it certainly is not final. But I'm just thinking about some of the stuff I learned. I mean, the thing that I think you're referring to is I often talk about the focus on being profitable. That people they talk about cash is king, and that's true. Cash is oxygen when you're a business owner. Being able to collect your receivables and faster than your payables become due, and having cash to be able to meet your obligations. But the lesson I think I spoke of at that group, Andrew, was the lesson around being profitable. I didn't really have a pricing strategy, and I often ask people, what's a good profit margin? And I remember speaking to a church group here in New Jersey, and I said, is there such a thing as a Christian profit margin, right? That kind of thing, right? And so the profit margin is, should be what the market will pay, what the market will bear, that for the product or service that you're delivering. So it's not even my necessary perception of value; it's the market's perception of value, right? So you look at any product, and you're like, well, how did they establish that price? And I think many small business owners often are not either thinking aggressively enough about pricing, and that there's room to increase pricing. And I tell people to be unapologetically profitable, right? That I don't like competing to be the low cost provider, and I think so many small business owners are like, well, I'm going to beat them on price. Well, I want to beat people on service, on my relationship, on the value that I'm delivering. And to me, that really is what entrepreneurship is. It really is. It's creating value in the world, creating value to your customer, but then that value creates an asset that takes care of you. So I'm going to take care of my customer, but then the asset should be able that I'm creating a business, product, real estate, that I own. At some point, entrepreneurs need to think, am I creating an asset that will take care of me? If all I'm doing is sort of trading here and trading hours for time and working, confusing activity with productivity and progress, how can I create an asset that will take care of me and take care of my family and pass that down? And the only way you can do that consistently is by creating a profitable operation and being unapologetically profitable. And finding a way to deliver value that people will pay for over the long term. So I think that's what you were referring to, Tandra. I hope that answers the question.
But even more graphic. I think you were saying that your profit goal per house was like
Oh yeah,
5 or 10,000,
yeah, yeah.
and the veteran investor was like, "I'm not doing a house unless I'm making 50,000
I
on
know, and
it."
so yeah, that was the funny. I there's a couple blocks in Chicago where I built every house on the block, and I remember walking this investor down, showing them a block I completed as I started to imagine what my next project would be. And I was so proud. I said, that's 44 houses on this block, and I was saying, I built every house on this block. Real proud. And he said, so what did you make on this? I said, well, I made about $10,000 a house, right? And I made some fees, but my profit was $10,000 a house. And the guy was very, he got sort of quiet, and he was trying to figure out how to choose his words. And I won't drop the F bomb, but he said, it's funny, Lyneir, I wouldn't even F with a house unless I can make at least $54,000 a house. And I remember going home, it burned me for like 6 months. And I kept going, 44,000 times 44 houses, it was like 1.8 million. I haven't done the math now in 10 years, but it was like, man, I left $1.8 million on the table according to this guy. Now, again, there's a lot of factors into that, but I always think about, how do I think about pricing? The other thing I think about just coming out of that failure period, Andrew, was I tell people, entrepreneurs were such optimists. And, I was always an offensive player. I could get the next deal. I could raise capital. But I was never a defensive player. And what I learned many years after my sort of down, having to sell the business, the failure, right, was I think about the worst day on the first day. And so even when I'm pursuing a new opportunity, I always think, all right, what could go wrong? Let me just imagine it. I'm still going to expect the best. I still have, behind me a book, some of which my father gave me, of positive mental attitude and success, all of, success orientated, success, natured books. And so it's not as if you have a negative attitude, or as I said, you can't be fearful about things. But I do take it takes a moment and say, let me just go through the things that a year from now, 5 years from now, I would have said, if this goes wrong, how will I do it? Just to imagine that and to think through it and to have a plan for it so that I could avoid, so that first day, as I'm imagining, I'm going to make $2 million on this deal. It's going to take me 8 months. It's going to, I'm going to find 4 of the customers like this. I sit some time and say, okay, what if it takes me 18 months? Mm-hmm. What if I only make $1 million? How am I going to adjust? So part of the thing I should have adjusted in my first business was I had a whole lot of employees. I was so proud of the team I built, and I didn't want to lay off people. And so I didn't reduce my staff in time because things was taking longer. I just thought I'll get new business. And ultimately, I, sort of ran out of cash, right? Almost, prototype of what happens to, small business. You run out of cash, right? And so had I really thought through, okay, if this doesn't work, what do I do? So I encourage entrepreneurs to sit with their new opportunity and say, if what could go wrong? What's the negative headline? What's the, cash flow? What's if the product doesn't work? Just to, what's the market opportunity is different than I perceive? What will I do? How will I pivot? How will I, survive? And just that way, that when that opportunity, when the worst case does happen, you're not imagining it for the first time. Even if it's some derivative of what you thought about, you're prepared. You're not caught flat-footed. You're prepared to, to maneuver and to continue to grow.
Okay, no, that's excellent. And what some things you can only learn by having a business or having mentors. And one thing that I heard that seems to make a lot of sense is, most people aren't really successful in business till their third business. So sometimes you have to hurry up and fail. And there's nothing wrong with that either. But, you made a lot of good points on pricing. And, I run into that all the time because most small businesses underprice, and you can't be the low cost provider because you're charging less and your costs are more. So how are you going to compete? And what many times they do is they don't realize that you can't just make enough money to pay yourself. You have to make enough money to pay yourself as if you hired yourself.
Yep.
And then you have to make money on top of that because you haven't really made any money until you made money on top of that, which if you don't do, you can never grow.
Yeah.
Do you run into that a lot? How do you approach that with people? Because you probably see that in different businesses.
Yeah. It's yeah. I'm so reticent about giving sort of categorical advice, right? Because this is all Mike Tyson. Everybody's got a plan till they get punched, right? Then you start to maneuver. But I do think you got to get in the game. You have a plan. You have some cash. You try to build a team. You got to tell the story. I call it the narrative and the numbers, right? You got to, be able to sell the vision and why it works. But pricing and everything else is about understanding the pro forma. And I think one of the things that we stress at our program at Rutgers is understanding both, right? That you got to understand your product and sales and marketing and how to communicate to strategic partners and to customers and sell the vision to employees. But at the same time, you got to really have an understanding of your numbers to go with that narrative. To really be able to grow. And Andrew, I'm sorry, I was looking at one of the questions in the chat about renting versus owning. I love that question. It's something that the bulk of my career has been in commercial real estate, and it's very different because I didn't grow up in real estate. I'm the least handy person that you could find, but really last year is when it all crystallized for me in this way that wealth is created by owning assets that generate revenue and appreciate over time. And whether it's businesses, again, as I talked about, serving a value, creating something of value that hopefully will create an asset that will take care of the entrepreneur, or real estate. There's a whole lot of, discussion now around gentrification and anti-gentrification initiatives. And, it was Mayor Rasparaka, who one day I heard him speak, and I thought it was brilliant when he said, hey, man, one way to deal with gentrification is to own something. And so, my focus of late has been helping entrepreneurs and really people of color in general to think about owning property, owning commercial real estate, and not in the traditional, nothing wrong with it. The rich dad, poor dad, or buy a house and flip a house and rent a house. That's just not my orientation. I'm sure there's a whole lot of wealth created there. But my thought is for entrepreneurs who are operating businesses, to the extent that there is an opportunity to own real estate and to do the analysis where there's an area where the real estate is valuable, where it has fundamentals, visibility, access, parking, location, understanding some market conditions, that you understand if I buy this and whether it's just me operating from this. I always tell people to think about yourself as a tenant of that building. So there's the tenant paying rent and there's the building owner. Even if it's the same person, it's almost two different enterprises that you really want to make sure there's enough income coming in from the rental income expected from the tenant. Again, even if it's just you, to be able to service that, because real estate is a longer term. You're holding, you're paying down the debt, you're looking for appreciation, you're looking for value creation opportunities. And I just think I love to see more and more entrepreneurs. My dad owned our little bar. I said I was going to start posting the picture. My brother actually has a video where he says, we grew up in an apartment above our bar. And so, the main speaker was right under my bedroom. So that's why I know all of the old, Motown songs, right? I would hear them blasted at 1 or 2 in the morning. But we lived above that that bar, but we own the building. And over time, that building paid for us to go to college. He refinanced it, was able to buy other property and other small businesses. And so, I'm not suggesting that everyone should, live above, their business. But, this thought about, can I own property? How do I structure deals? How do I invest in commercial property? Something I'm super passionate about right now, and not just sort of building my own empire, but really creating vehicles and structures and arranging financing that allow more people of color to have an ownership stake in commercial property in their communities. Again, I lead the Center for Urban Entrepreneurship and Economic Development. And economic development is about quality of life. It's about improving a neighborhood. And so if we're going to be entrepreneurs in the community, if we live there, if we patronize, whether it's the coffee shop down the street, or we get our nails done, or go to some health center, or go to the cell phone store down the street, how often do we see people of color owning the commercial property, owning the strip center or the shopping center or the building on the commercial corridor? I just like to see more people of color, and that's the work I do in my business, my social enterprise, Chicago Trend.
Okay, no, that's amazing. I mean, definitely ownership is key. Some businesses, their property is worth way more than their business is. Cool. So that's cool, but you do have to be careful of your cash flow. And especially if you're growing, you got to just make sure you're going to put your dollars where you're going to get the best return on your investment. But, if you're in the right position to get the right property, there's nothing better. So, we've been talking about some great stuff here and want to continue. Time flies when you're having fun. But what I want to do is take a quick break. I've done the Power Breakfast. It started in Newark more than 10 years ago, and actually went to Lyneir before I started, and he was like, supportive from the beginning.
Thank you.
And over that time period, it's been great. We've had over 1,000 people come to the Power Breakfast. We've, as a result, has led to tens of millions of dollars in economic activity, as well as tens of millions of dollars in financing. So, it's really
I'm very proud of you, man. I want to let the whole audience know you've done phenomenal work, man. Very proud of, all of your consulting. As Small Business Pro University, you've done amazing work, and much applause is due.
Okay, well, thank you. And it can only do that with the support of other great people like you, and and just collaborating. So, what I'm going to do, we took a break, but this fall, I'm going to bring back the Power Breakfast, and really looking forward to, even making it more impactful. So for those of you who have never been to the Power Breakfast or don't know what it is, here's a quick video so you can see what it's all about. And then we'll be back talking with Lyneir. My name's Andrew Frazier from A&J Management. One of the things we're here to do is supercharge your day. What we do as part of our business, as an outgrowth of our business, is we have a series of brain trust initiatives that we're continuing to build on. And really through the brain trust initiatives, what we're doing is we're bringing a higher level of intellectual capital to bear. So we're bringing in resources, experts, expertise from across the country to share best practices and connect with business owners, entrepreneurs, organizational leaders to help you be more effective in what you do.
What I'm learning from Power Breakfast that sets it apart from other networking opportunities is how my local activities integrate and are part of the larger business community.
It brings together people of all industries who can share all different levels of expertise and can educate each other on different changing nature and evolving regulatory legal landscape, as well as all facets of all industries that they might not otherwise be privy to.
The Power Breakfast is so important for the entrepreneurial community because it gives the various business people who come together an opportunity to interact, discover what it is they can do to help each other and also do some business.
From a corporate perspective, Marcia McLennan, and or for that matter, Andrew and his business model, his branding, none of us can succeed individually. We need partnership. Collaboration is the new norm.
Since 2011, the Power Breakfast has been held in the northern New Jersey area, but over the next couple of years, we expect to expand into Pennsylvania and New York as well.
Welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05. This is Andrew Frazier, your host. I'm here with Lyneir Richardson, talking small business. He's the executive director of the community, or CUED for short, and at Rutgers University, and doing great things in the community. We're talking about really, ways to help urban entrepreneurs be more successful, and Lyneir's been doing that for a long time. So, all the things that you've been doing, what would you say is the most important thing for urban entrepreneurs? What do they need the most, and what can people help them do?
Yeah, it's a tough question, man. Again, because the reason why it's tough is everybody's running their own race at their own pace, right? My mother says not better or worse, is different, right? So some people want to have a $1 billion enterprise. Some people want to just make enough money to support their family, and there's no judgment, right? So I think what's common is, how do I create an enterprise that can be consistently profitable, that has cash flow, that in theory, if it's, depending on the type of business, is it one that, we're just doing this because the goal is to keep the owner sort of engaged and employed? Or is it really trying to be a standalone business that, the owner can really think of himself or herself as a shareholder, right? And so I'm putting people in place and I'm generating resources so that the company can operate as a standalone. I just think more and more of us need to just think about, why did we go into business and what are the goals? And again, there's no judgment about right or wrong. It's, what am I trying to accomplish? Am I trying to, I always start when people come in and tell me an idea, let's say, what's your number, right? Are you trying to make $80,000 a year or $800,000 a year or $8 million a year? And then I work back through their business plan. So, okay, you're trying to make $800,000 a year and you got a bakery. All right, how many to make 800, also, my mother used to say, it's not what you make, is what you take home. So it's not about the top line, it's the bottom line. So I'm quickly trying to zero in on the entrepreneur. What are you trying to take home? When I was making $100,000 at my job, I like to make $100,000. Or, I would love to make $500,000, $800,000. So that's take home. So then I go back and say, all right, to be able to take home $100,000, right? Whatever the business, what's the average profit margin in that business? 10%, 20%. Okay, to have $100,000 take home and the average profit margin is 10%, you got to have $1 million of revenue. It means you got to do whatever, $80,000 a month. You got to do $20,000 a week. You got to do $4,000 a day if you open 5 days a week, right? Once you start to break it down that way, and so is the business plan and the business model sufficient to achieve that goal? And if so, how do we now go to the next, thought about who's the customer and how do we get capital to run it? But it starts with, what's the entrepreneur really trying to accomplish?
No, that's great. I focus on financial management and strategy, and I've likened myself to a finance evangelist because it's so important in business, and so many business owners miss that whole side of managing their business to their own peril. And I have that same conversation. And so much so that I put in my book, the third chapter is called "What is Your Greatest Fear?" Because people fear numbers and their financials, but without that, you're in trouble.
Right.
A lot of people go into business doomed from the start because they haven't done the number like that. If you want to make 800,000 a year or 100,000 a year, and you think you could do it selling 150,000 in sales, you're doomed. Because it's important to do the number. So I think that's critical and a great point. We talked about what's most needed, and one of the things that when people ask me that, a lot of times I say what's needed is they need a chance. Hire them, buy something from them. That's the best thing you can do for them, because then they can make money, they can do what they do, they can learn how to do what they do better, and you get something of value. And that's what business is all about.
Yeah.
And one group that I connected with, which is really great, it's called ETV, or Empower the Village. It's a nonprofit, and they have 4 pillars, and one of the pillars is economic development. And they're doing a great directory of black businesses throughout the 25 states, and they have a program that they're doing which is tremendous, and it's called Make Every Friday Black Friday.
Yeah.
And that's really that's huge, because if people get opportunity to do business, then they'll get better, and that's what they need. A lot of us don't get that opportunity, and that's why they don't make it.
Yes, 100% agree. Right. I have a friend that says, let's just do business and we can handle our charity. Right. So we can handle our own charity. So I equate that both to, when people ask me all the time, so what do businesses need? It's access to contacts that hopefully can lead to contracts, that hopefully can lead to capital, right? And so you always hear access to capital. It's like, let me be able to meet someone who can either give me an opportunity to do business or can invest that will allow me to grow and to make strategic moves that can grow my business. And, Andrew, you heard me call last year the year of, pandemic, a protest, and a political pandemonium, right? I called it PPP, right? But what became crystal clear is, that there's all this discussion around racial wealth gap closing and racial justice investing and generational wealth creation in general. Well, that's through business. And so there really is a need for entrepreneurs. We saw the grit and determination of entrepreneurs through, the shutdowns around the pandemic. It's really inspiring to hear stories of people pivoting or finding, ways to do business, open new businesses, for people who closed and started a new business. And so, that resilience, that's in the ethos of entrepreneurship, right? And, that's what makes, the work rewarding for me, both as an entrepreneur myself, but also as someone who, endeavors to support entrepreneurs in their growth.
Okay, excellent. So, we've gotten some great comments and some great questions. We've got a lot of people on tonight. We've got John, Miani, Daryl, Timothy, Ed, and, from different areas of the country. So, it's always great to have people on. Always appreciate your questions. And, we're getting close to the end, but just want to put up another question we have for you from Daryl. What growth areas do you see in Newark, or Brick City as they call it?
So Brick City, so it's been fun. So I moved from Chicago to work in Newark, New Jersey in 2009. And not really knowing Brick City, knowing Newark. But what is, is you see the many assets in Newark. And the commercial is, 5 public universities, close to a international airport, close to a seaport, 20 minutes from Midtown Manhattan, downtown Manhattan, the highway system. You can get anywhere from here. What I continue to see as opportunity, both is the growing sort of tech sector in Newark, given its fiber and other sort of tech assets. The Audible, the great work being done by Audible.com and Panasonic, and sort of you got tech companies. You didn't have anchor institutions like Prudential and PSE&G that have made Newark home. I think in Prudential's case, over 140 years, maybe 150 years now. So you have these enterprises here that are looking to support entrepreneurs, and I just see many more opportunities in tech-enabled, tech-adjacent businesses. At the same time, again, real estate. So I know, Daryl has a real estate, sort of orientation. Again, it's small city, small footprint, but at its core, Newark had over 450,000 people. Now I think the next census, hopefully it'll show up that it's just over 300,000. So there's room for growth, and I think people will continue to see the conveniences of Newark. Now we got great political leadership in Newark, and I think there'll be opportunities both in tech and in real estate going forward. In Newark, and the, as we call it, belovedly, the brick city.
Definitely a key thing is opportunity, and Newark's continuing to move forward. Every year you go there and it looks different. So that's a really good thing to look at. Time always moves faster than you would like. But before we close out, what I want to do is two things. One, I recently, let you know that I recently completed a companion workbook for my book, Running Your Small Business Like a Pro. And I'm going to have a launch for my next book, the Masterpreneur Playbook, in late July, and looking forward to that as well. But for those of you who don't know about my book or want to check out the workbook, I invite you to do that. But here's a quick video just to learn a little bit about what the book's about and what it helps you to do.
Growing revenue, increasing profitability, and obtaining financing are the results of running your small business like a pro.
This is really the path to achieving the success that most entrepreneurs and business owners are looking to achieve. But it's a path where most people get stuck between step one and step two. Businesses close every day because their owners were not able to create a successful, sustainable enterprise. If you do not create an enterprise, the only way that you can sell your business successfully is you sell yourself with it.
This book is a common sense guide for learning how to run your small business as a professional enterprise.
You can pick up the book as a new entrepreneur or as a seasoned entrepreneur and get something out of it. It's very educational.
It provides a fundamental understanding of the challenges small businesses face with real-world solutions that drive results.
Life examples of what happens in business with cash flow, handling money, very, very accurate, and they were experiences that I've had.
Structure. If I do a shoot, I know that there are certain steps that I have to take to get me to where I need to go. But when it comes to business, I didn't have the same sense of what needed to be done. Andrew helped me see systems or steps we take to grow your business. So he's helped systematize it.
I worked with a client who was looking to retire and sell his business and expected to get over $500,000 for it. However, when I assessed the business and looked to figured out what the value was, it was less than $100,000. Why was this? Because he didn't create an enterprise. The business was centered around him, and without him, there wasn't a business. This book helps you to understand how to create an enterprise where it can run successfully without you.
Get your copy today. Andrew Frazier's new book online at www.runningyoursmallbusinesslikeapro.com. Also available on Amazon.
Here we are back at Leadership Live at 8:05, talking small business here with Lyneir Richardson. Had a great conversation this evening, but just, Lyneir, can you take a minute and just give a quick recap of a couple key things that, as an entrepreneur business owner, I could put to work immediately within my business based on what your experience and what we've been talking about today?
Yeah, as I said, as you're planning, think about, plan and be optimistic, but go through as you're making new plans and think about what can go wrong. And I call it, as I said, think about the worst day, the first day. As you're thinking about growth strategies, it's understanding the directions and trends and how what's the next economy and how to be in the flow of where business is. And then a constant focus on profitability. On cash flow, yes, you gotta, there's stories of people being profitable without cash, but I believe if you're strongly profitable, you can figure out how to deal with cash flow issues. So being profitable, being remarkably profitable is something that I tell people to do. Right now, there's a whole lot of attention on small business and capital and resources and programs. Avail yourself to everything that's available, especially some stuff that has capital attached to it. I love folks who've done well in the pandemic who just apply for grants. I always tell people a $50,000 grant is like a $500 or sometimes even a $1 million sale, right? So to the extent that there's non-dilutive capital, can you make the case for that capital? And can you go to programs? Andrew's programs, the City of Newark, the Invest Newark has programs. Our Center for Urban Entrepreneurs has great programs. I don't think it's either or. It's finding a place that you fit and where you feel like you get value, and that's going to help you grow, right? This is a moment, and I think I'm encouraging people to be urgent and passionate about being profitable in this moment.
Okay. No, that's excellent advice. As you say, there's nothing wrong with making money as long as you're creating value. And, that's what you should be doing as a business owner. Thank you, Lyneir, so much for coming out. And I know it's evening, you're away from your family, but just taking some time to share with us. It's been tremendous and very valuable.
Thank you very much. Again, I appreciate you having us. And please, all the folks in New Jersey, contact us at the Rutgers Center for Urban Entrepreneurship and Economic Development.
Okay, excellent. So you've got in the chat, you can go straight to their link. And definitely they do some great programs. I've been involved in some of them. I've had clients that have gone through them, even going through one of your programs right now. So they are doing great things in the community. So thank you again, Lyneir, and look forward to continuing relationship and supporting each other as we go forward. So take care, have a good evening. And as we close out, definitely Leadership Live every week. We have some great guests, and looking forward to, I always look forward to every Tuesday night and being with you. And, really at the end of the day, the more you know, the faster you grow. And that's really why we do Leadership Live at 8:05. So thanks again for joining us, and look forward to catching you next week.
Thank you for listening to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbpro.u.com.